All right. So I am just getting set up and we can. Hello, Kim. I'm getting my laptop set up beside me so I can see a few questions as they run through. I need that turned off. I assume you can still hear me. It should be going off of my phone. We'll give people 1 or 2 minutes and then we will just get started, because as always you can watch this later, which is handy dandy. And we are going to do some hair coloring, not actual hair coloring, but Copic hair coloring, kind of looking at how to tackle that, or at least a couple different ways to tackle that. So we're going to use the Trendy Tees stamp set. Excellent, Kim. Thank you. And we had done, I've actually done 2 separate tutorials. I did one that I used on my YouTube channel, and then I did another where I did the dark skin tones, and that was actually real hair coloring. Yes, that would be completely fun. And people have asked me before if I color my hair with Copics, which you actually can, but I have not tried that. I don't have a sense of how long that would last or not last, but you can color your hair with Copics. That is an option if you'd like. I mean, we could do a video of it sometime. I did actually a whole post of different things you could color your Copics on at one point in my life, and we talked about correcting small chips in wood, in paint, because it comes in all these color options. And so, yeah, playing with Copics. So last month when we talked about skin, there was the question about maybe doing some info on hair, some coloring tips and tricks. And so that's what we're going to tackle today. And Crafting Kimmy has a ton of people stamps that you can do all sorts of coloring on. Hello, Janet. And for me, the reason I'm choosing to use the Trendy Tees is we've got some real basic open hair. It was easy to do the faces for the skin, and so then to come back and do some of the hair on these guys really makes a lot of sense, especially if what your goal is to practice. Some of the other images that have a lot of hair, I know one of them is not in stock right now, but Tweety Pies does. The other one, though, there's a mermaid that has a major head of hair, and we had done a tutorial on that a long time ago about how to color her no line. So, oh, nice. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, and that stamp set has the 4 people, the kind of mom, dad, son, and daughter looking set to me. And then you have kind of the words that can fit on their t-shirts. And then there's a coordinating set that has all these fun little icons then that fit on their t-shirts. And so you can give them little doodads on their t-shirt. I did a little girl with a rainbow on her shirt. You can do the little sayings, but first coffee, BFF, a dog and a cat, but one of these will fit on each of those. These would also actually be really, really good stickers, stamps. Not tuned in yet. These would also be really, really good stamps for your planner or calendar. If you're a person who does that, this has some really fun options that would work really well in a planner or calendar. And I'm just realizing that myself, that I should actually use those that way, because that would be handy. My dog's vet appointment. Get a little tag on my day. And Kim mentions that you can personalize these stamps to make them look like specific people, and that these are pretty fun little faces to do that with. You can change the hair, you can change the skin tone and all of that to make them look more like someone you know, and put a little family together. We've had a couple design team members do that, and it's really fun. So what we're going to talk about is hair. And previously I had done all of these little heads of skin and hair. So this was a lighter skin tone thing that I was going through, and then I used some lighter hair tones as well. So we're going to use the same skills to do some different sets of colors. What I will promise you is that at the end of filming today, I will take photos of all of these, and I'll make sure that you can see, because what I have like on these guys is I actually made spaces to hold my skin color combination, my hair color combination. I did not do it as formally on the dark skin tones, but I will add them. And that way you will have this kind of neat reference of a whole slew of skin tones and hair tones options. And there'll probably be some like extra bonus ones kind of off to the side too. That's one of the things about skin versus hair. To me, hair has an even broader range than skin. Obviously skin tone, you can really go crazy, and this is the tip of the iceberg. But with hair, you've got blonde, brunette, redhead, anything in between all of that, with all the auburns and darker and lighter tones, black. And then of course now with color, it can really be any color you'd like, and ombre and changing, and I mean, it can be unicorn. So hair opens up this whole nother can of worms of how do I even keep track of that? And so again, using little images like this that you repeat and then somehow hold on to, whether it's even just in a photo file of this is a bunch of skin tones, hair that I really, really like, and keeping a little folder of that on file for yourself, whether it's on your phone as a digital file, kind of in a photo file type system, or if it's little cards like these. These are, I have a combo of paper on my table today. I've got some that is Hammermill color copy cover, and these three groups are on that. So, and it's on this one, Hammermill color copy cover. And then these two are the Express It blending card. So I'm using two different kinds of paper. These are the two that hit my desk most often. And I like them both for blending. The Express It tends to be a little bit smoother. You can actually feel it. And so sometimes you can put more ink and have it stay kind of stationary. If you're a person who struggles with blending, something like Hammermill is going to be a better choice. It's what's called a softer paper, meaning the fibers are a little bit looser. They're not as tightly bound. And so the ink is going to move a little bit more, which for blending is a bonus. It's going to help you out. All right. So what I wanted to do first is on one of these blank ones that has nothing going on, is I want to show you two major kind of trains of thought. I can't remember. Oh, yep. I can get a little larger for you guys. So I'll kind of keep track and make sure I don't completely fall off. All right. So what I want to talk about first is there's kind of two ways to think about coloring hair in the Copic world. One of those is to blend it smooth, like everything, like the skin, like all that stuff, that you're really still looking for the highlights, the shadows, and creating that smoother look. The second train of thought is adding texture and have all of that little tiny thin strands of hair. Obviously, we can't put every strand on there. We're giving the hint of texture. So that is really more an issue of personal preference and artistic license. So, and Kim, you're having a hard time finding the Express It. Huh. And I see, I haven't even looked recently, so I'll have to do a search. If I remember, if you don't, ping me at some point and I'll do a little bit more of a search and see what I find. It comes from Australia. I do know that, so I'm not sure. Oh, never mind. Got it. Never mind. All right. So, but what I'm going to do is on this little head of hair, we're going to take a really simple color combo, and I'm going to show you kind of the smooth versus textured. So with almost every color, and there's two exceptions for me, this is talking Michelle coloring here, I am going to base a head of hair in the lightest color. So this is an E21. Oh, it's just kind of off screen. We'll see if we can find a spot where it doesn't block your view. And I would fill it in. And it doesn't matter what style of coloring I'm going to do. I would actually fill it in with my base color, and then I would actually let it sit for a few seconds to almost dry, especially on the textured side. So then think about what we're coloring here. We're coloring a ball, right? It's hair that's on her head. So we want to remember that. And what happens with hair is that it creates, because of that bend around the head, it almost creates a halo effect. So if you take a ring and set it on top of that person's head, we'd have this halo that goes all the way around like her forehead and around. That's kind of that scoop on each side is where we're going to end up seeing a highlight. Now, the basic rule, forget all of what I just said, the basic rule is that we're going to start at the part and work out, and the tips and work up. So part, out, tips, up. And that's our general sense. So on this side, let's aim for the right side. I'm going to aim for a little bit more smooth. This is E23. And I'm going to come out from the part. It's going to be a little bit darker around her face. And then as it catches light, it'll get a little darker. But we'll have this highlight that kind of rings right around her little face. My darkest or my shadow color is E25. I come to the exact same places I start and go shorter and smaller amounts. So it's going to go a little shorter. I do want it to be a little uneven. Even though this is not the textured side, I don't want it to have this like very straight, this is where this stops. I'd like some of it to be a little taller, some of it to be a little shorter. Okay, so I've held on to that highlight. I've got the dark coming from that part out and the tips up. With longer hair, this would have to come higher. So these would be much longer and these would be shorter. There'd be a distinct difference there. And then because I'm blending smooth, I'm going to hit reverse, just like we do on skin. I'm going to come back to that E23. And with hair, most of the time, I'm still going to start in that dark area. I'm going to flick up. The highlight's going to shrink a little bit. That's okay. From the part out, all the way back to my lightest color. And this time I can really just start right inside that highlight and go back and forth. Now it's going to get a little bit darker than what it started because I've added another layer of ink. But this works for hair. It's highlighted in the right spot. It's that ring kind of going right around her forehead level. It's getting darker. We have a little bit of darkness close to her face as it kind of closes in. It gets darker at the tips. You might notice that I have one area of hair on that right side that is not colored, and that's the hair that's falling behind her shoulders, right next to her neck. That is always going to be significantly darker than the other hair. So I'm going to start and just fill that in with my E25. And get that all filled in. And then I might even come back and I'd either do a second layer of E25 or grab an E27 and I'd put it right against her neck, and then I'd also put it right against where that other hair kind of loops around and comes in front of it. And I think you can see that visually, just gonna smooth that out. Visually, that pushes that piece of hair behind her. And that's the goal. So this is one option for hair coloring, smooth coloring. Grab my pen before I forget. And on this for hair, we're doing E21, E23, E25, and then a bonus underneath is an E27. And that's only going on that hair that's falling behind her. The second side is one that we're going to add texture to instead. So again, I would base this in my light color, and this is where I do want to let it sit for a few seconds because I don't want it to blend smooth. Then I'm going to work my way up through my E23 and E25, but this time I'm going to get way up on the tip of my marker by holding it very vertical. So it's kind of straight up and down. That means my fingers get to scooch all the way down on the marker like they want to most days anyway, so I can get pretty close to that tip. Get my marker nice and tall, and then I'm going to use that little tip to flick out in the direction of the hair growth. Okay, so notice some are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. They're all different lengths. They're kind of bending around that corner. I can always come back and add more, but I've gone from the part out, and now I'm going to come from the tips up. Now, I'll show you here in a second some mistakes that I see, and it's harder to avoid when it's longer hair. But notice I'm starting all the way from the bottom and coming up. Again, different lengths, trying to bend it around that curve a little bit. Pat back on. Hey, Carla. And Carol. Hello, both of you. E25, thanks for popping in for whatever length you can. So I've moved up my color now. When I'm doing texture like this, it's not so much about shorter, it's about fewer. Okay, so if I did, this is an example, not like a truth or a fact. If I did 10 flicks of my E23, I would come in with my E25 and say do 7 or even 5. But I'm going to shrink the number of flicks with that darker color. Some will be shorter, but some will still go all the way out into that lighter area. Same thing from the bottom corner. Fewer flicks, some shorter, some longer, just not as many. I'm going to give you some options for adjusting there in just a second, but we also have to treat that hair underneath. So on this side again, I'm going to start with that darker E25. Let's go ahead and fill this in with that darker color. Now, if I have a bigger head of hair, sometimes I'll use a lighter color so I can see more texture in that under piece. But because these are so small, even on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and just fill that in with one of the darker colors. Thank you, Carol. That was very sweet of you. Probably said that 5 minutes ago. And then my E27 is going to come in, and I'm going to try to do a few little flicks, but it might look like I'm more filling it in. And obviously you have to be pretty careful around her little face. Okay, that was the E27. So options on textured hair when we see that. So sometimes you'll have one that kind of goes the wrong direction. It doesn't bend nicely. You can soften this effect without losing the texture. So what I would do, remember our 3 main colors, we have E21, E23, and E25. Now, if I had a whole string of these, this would be easier to show. But I ended with my E25. To soften this, I'm actually going to skip a marker and go down to E21 since I only really have the 3. Open that up. I'm going to use a little bit broader stroke, so I need to scoop back on my marker, and I'm going to literally start in that highlight and I'm going to go back and forth. I don't need to go all the way to the part or all the way to the bottom, but I do one pass and I let it sit. And the reason for that is the ink is still moving, that moisture is still wicking out into that paper, and as it hits those other little strokes of ink, it's going to like re-wet them, and then they'll start to move. So what you can see happen is little edges get fuzzy and soften and lighten. So I do one pass and I stop, I let the ink move, I decide, is that enough? Did that soften it to the point that I like it, or do I need more? And my rule of thumb is that I will allow people to do 2 passes. If they want texture, I would say stop there no matter what. You can fiddle more with your markers, but don't wash it anymore, because you're going to lose that texture. As soon as you do more, you're going to lose it. So if you want the texture, you can do kind of 2 washes to soften things, but then you need to kind of step back, come back to it later. Hopefully you can see the difference between the 2 sides, and that gives you a sense of, well, what would I want to do with the hair coloring? Because again, this is where you get to, this is where you guys get to make those artistic choices. You'll all laugh at this. This is a complete side note. So my new license plate in Alaska, they have all these different designs you can choose from. Literally, like there's 3 that are just free, and then there's like 50 others that you can pick. Mine is one of the free ones that has this little silhouette of mountains, and it is called the artistic license design for the state. So my license plate literally now says artistic license at the bottom of my car license plate. I love it. So cool. I should post that, because then I can show everyone that, yes, I have an artistic license. Okay, enough of that. So what I wanted to show you guys then, if you have questions, obviously please ask. And I'm not turning very often because my laptop's over to the right of me. So I am looking. So if you have questions, specific ones, please ask. My plan is to show you guys kind of a slew of color combinations now, kind of going through a range of different colors. One of the things I told you as I started and I was basing this is there are 2 colors of hair that sometimes I will not base the hair. And so I was going to show you really quick one of them, because it's probably the simplest hair color to do, which is a blonde, almost a white blonde. So we used to, I don't know if this term is still used, but a towhead, little kids that are that literally white blonde, and typically darken as they get older, but some don't, and some artificially keep their hair that color, and that's okay. You got to feel good about yourself. So find what makes that soul sing and the heart happy. So I'm going to scoop my E2s off to the side for just a second. And this is going to look odd on her. I'm just going to say that right now. We're going to actually put a blonde on her. And so this isn't necessarily, would not necessarily be a color combo that I'd put together, but I want to show you how I do this. So I tend to color hair with texture. That is the look I like. I have some good practice at it, and so I have fairly good control and can get the directions and stuff like that. But to do a white blonde, I'm not going to do that base coat first. Whatever I'm doing, I'm actually going to leave a white highlight. So I'm going to use that a Y00. I'm trying to find where best on the screen this sits so you guys can see it. And remember, your paper turns, so make sure you keep turning your figure, even if they need to go all the way on their head, so your hand is going in a direction it is happy, especially for hair, because we're flicking and trying to get those curves. So my Y00 is going to come around from the part, just like we did. Notice I'm coming back to the part, and then coming up from underneath. And I'm leaving a white highlight. And this one I can do all over hair so you guys can see. I won't be able to do this on all of them because I think you guys would rather see several color combos. So now we can see that ring happening, kind of goes through her forehead or her eyes and around her head. But it's bright white. So the second color that I use And again, there are gazillions of hair color combos out there. So find ones that you love. This happens to be ones in the traveling sets that I have. Y21, again, from the part, flicking out, not as many flicks. It still comes all the way out toward that highlight, starting at the part, just not as many. I know some of the times when I teach, I know I sound like a little bit like a broken record, but then I feel like people get it. So that's the Y21. We're going to go ahead and give that underside the full treatment there. My hand's trying to decide which way it really wants to flick today. It's not totally sure yet, but for right now, it's working pretty well. Okay, so we've deepened that color, and honestly, you could stop right there and you've got a fairly reasonable white blonde. I do go into some of the deeper shadow areas and add a Y28. This is not the color, like the actual lid looks like it's kind of a metallic gold, and it's called Lionette Gold. That is not what Y28 looks like. It's kind of this odd greenish yellow. But if I come into the part and do 2 or 3 little flicks out, and these are shorter, right out from the part, and then I will, the only other place I'm going to add this is right underneath, and I'm going to go right, a few flicks right near where the hair overlaps, and then I'll probably do a few little flicks in towards her neck on both sides. Now, if I do a whole lot more with this, it's definitely going to go to kind of a dishwater dirty blonde, and that is it. I would stop there, and I usually don't come back and touch things. So here's this, and because this is so light, you don't see all of that like little nitty gritty texture. So 2 options if you're seeing your texture. You can find that lightest color again, but this time do not start in the highlights. Start right on top of that dark color where there's that Y28, because that's probably the part that's bothering you visually. And even though we didn't use the Y00 underneath, give it 1 pass under there. Again, it's just going to melt those edges and soften that. And so that might be more pleasing to your eye. We don't see a lot of texture. You have to get close for this, but that is going to be that white blonde. So this is one of the hair color combos that I would leave paper showing through. And so on this one, I used a Y00, Y21, Y28. You can go back in with a colorless blender from that highlight out. Again, the edges are already so soft because it's so light, I tend not to. So this is her hair, and this was her skin. We'll just do that for this one so you guys can see it when we photo it later on. So that is a blonde. And then the other combination, I should have remembered I had that. I will keep that off to the side here. The other color combination that I have that I don't always fill in with a base color is black hair. Black hair is probably one of the harder hair combos to do because it's almost impossible to get it all the way to that deep, rich black, making it look like black hair and not, it either ends up looking like a helmet and not hair, or like a solid object versus hair, or it ends up looking like gray. It doesn't get dark enough. So there's a challenge there. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you one of the ways I do black hair, and then you can make a choice kind of when you go from there, and you can kind of play. All right, what do I need? That goes with that. I forgot a marker. Gosh darn it. Okay, we're gonna do this little boy right here that goes all the way dark, dark skin. I'm looking for a marker, just a second. Except there it is. Sorry. All right, stepping back. Over there. That's what I wanted. Okay. I'm going to use primarily C5, C7, and C9. Those are the cool gray families. And I'm going to go in reverse. I'm going to actually start with my C9, except I picked up my C5. C9. So on the little boy, we've got a little bit of a different challenge in that we don't, it doesn't just split open like the mom's does from apart and hang down. We've got some different directional things. So it comes kind of from his sides back, and then this kind of sweeps up and over, but we can make this work. So just like the other, we're thinking about where does it start and where does it stop. This one is going to have a little bit of a highlight that runs across this heavy bang. And then he might have a little bit of a highlight kind of out toward the outer edges on these little pieces of the side. But more of a challenge for sure. So C9 is going to be dark underneath because it flips up and over, right? So that can get filled in. And then we'll have these little short flicks because this rolls up and over. And I kind of want to show that. Now, here's the rule with black hair. I can always add more. I can always go back and add more. So when I'm working with the C9, I am working fairly tentatively. I'm not going to load it up right from the get-go. Remember, this is my darkest color. So I'm going to come in kind of sparingly, try to go in the direction that the artist has shown the hair to grow in. So we have this flip that comes over. And then I'm going to come to the side and come out from his face. Little tiny short guys. And I could do a couple coming back the opposite direction, but not a whole lot. There's just not space for it there. Same thing on this side. I'm going to have to put him on his head. My hand's not going to do it for me this time. So again, right from where it's coming off his little face, and then a few coming back in, darker red at the nape. Okay, so this is the start. And it should give you a sense when you've done that first round. And I would tell anybody this, if you're completely unsure of what direction should I be drawing, what print, stamp an extra one out on literally a Xerox piece of paper, just cheap paper, and take a marker or your pencil and draw some lines. Figure out, if I stop this here and work here, is that going to give me the look I want, the directional look? Because sometimes maybe you tried to go this way with the flicking and you get done and you're like, I don't even know what that hairdo is. I don't even know what's happening there. It's like, it's going against the artist's lines. It just doesn't work. So if you need to map it out, do it on a cheap piece of paper first and then come back to this. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'm just trying to get as much information to you guys. And that way, if you want to come back and listen again, you're getting all the good stuff. So now I'm going to step down to C7. I'm going to start at the same spot. And I'm going to go a little bit further into that highlight. And you're going to notice that highlight almost is going to disappear, even just on this second step. And keeping it, I don't want to lose all of it. But I'm starting out in that dark area. It's going to do two things. It obviously decreases the highlight area, but it's also softening that C9 just a little bit. So keep that in mind. Then on these sides, super small. And again, these are going to be pretty dark to finish, so I'm not worried too much. And then this side has a little more space just because of how he's got his little face tipped, or that we can see that side more. So we have tiny, tiny bits of white left. I'm going to go down to my C5. This is almost going to make that highlight disappear. And I am choosing to leave some, I won't on this side, the right side's going to disappear, but across that top swath of hair. And if I can leave a couple over here, I will. And then this is a fun thing with black hair. With black hair, a lot of times you might have kind of that bright white. If it's super slick and shiny, you might have a little bit more of a bright white highlight, or it could have a tone to it, like kind of a blue undertone. Thanks, Danielle. I will keep rambling. It might have a blue undertone, a red undertone. And so this is what's kind of fun about black hair. And this is, again, where total different thing than skin tones, in that I could literally have, I don't know, 30, 40 combinations just for black. And that's fairly narrow. Think about redheads and brunettes. I mean, thousands. So the color combinations, you're not really going to go wrong. These are just some fun ones to think about. One of my favorite markers is a BV20, and it really does a fun thing with the black hair. I'm going to use it just like I did when I lightened and went from my highlight out. So I'm going to use the tip of the marker, and I'm going to start in that highlight area, and I'm going to flick back and forth out into those grays. And what you're going to see is it's going to cool that black down. And even though I didn't have any white left, I'm going to put just right in that little lighter area and see what happens with that black. It just kind of cools it down. To me, it actually makes it look even more black versus gray. So then this is my last question on this head of hair. Did it get too black? Or does it look like he has gray hair? So if it looks like it got to black, I'm done. It's blended as much as I want to blend. It is finished. I'm not going to touch it anymore. If it didn't get there, I could start with my C7 or my C9 and come back in right in those deepest areas. So I would stick pretty close to those starting points. I wouldn't necessarily push all the way out. And I can add a few flicks with my C9. And when I hurry, then I end up with funny little lines going directions that I'm like, what is that doing? I don't know. But things like right along his little face, add just a few more right above his ear. Get a few on this side to balance him out. And maybe that visually is going to appeal more and get it to that black layer. Okay, so this is one option for black hair with that cool undertone. That's a BV20 that I used at the very end. Don't forget their eyebrows, folks. The kids on this this image set have eyebrows. So typically I would use one of the darker tones to fill the eyebrows in. I do want to show you this though with a black hair color. If I go back in with one of my grays, it may or may not work. It looks like it's going to work. This is actually the C7. It's not the C9. I'm not just filling it in. This is the C7. But you're going to use one of your darker tones for the eyebrows. Okay. So little guy, this was his skin. And I'm sorry, these aren't going to be as organized as those other ones, but his hair is I'm going to do it in the order C9, C7, C5, and BV20. There we go. Then let's find... We've got these little ladies. So I'm not going to fill these in. No. But an option that's kind of neat on black hair, start with a red. Now this is a very cool red. So it's going to go, it's an R85, and it's going to go with that C series And this time, I'm going to actually base her hair in that. Let it sit and dry for a momento. You can blow on it. You can use a heat gun, all of that good stuff. I tend to wave mine around. I'll do it loud enough so you guys can hear me in the background. But you can base it in those reds, and you could go with a warmer red. This is a very cool red to go with the C's. You could do a warmer red and then like use your neutral grays on top of it, or even your warm grays, and get a whole different look. And Carol, yes, I didn't look over and see your red like mine. Yes, exactly. So this is a very cool red. So depending on what kind of red you have, R29 or even R89, what is it? No, 59, R59. That's really, really dark, but R29 with the combo of R29 and 59 with the grays over it, if you have a brighter red undertone. So then starting over with my C9 and doing the exact same thing. So again, working with the tip of my marker, coming out and around. And again, one of the bonuses to working with an image over and over again is you get better and better at that image. If you've done a dozen of these mom t-shirt gals, this hairstyle, you will be able to whip those little suckers out lickety split, and you'll be like, this is so much fun and so much easier. So that you'll know, obviously the red is disappearing, but it's underneath. And Copic color, most of you I think are aware of this, is transparent. So we can see those underlying colors kind of playing through. That was my C7. C5, and I want to basically come all the way across. So this is kind of a rosy undertone. And I could, if I want to, I can brighten those up a little bit. It's going to push on them, so it'll brighten it. And then I feel like I'm going to come in just a little bit. This stayed nice and dark with that red underline. So I don't think she needs a whole lot of the C9, but I'll add a few flicks just for good measure. So left side, let's do this. That's my left, right? The left is R8, 5, C9, C7, C5. Oh, and Carol's got silver in there too. Nice, Carol. It's beautiful, I am sure. So let's do this, because now I'm talking about it and thinking about it. Where's this? Okay. See, this is where it's like a rabbit hole that you literally dive into. You can also go warmer with like an R29, and you could, if you use like an R24, it would stay like brighter. I don't know a good description. It has a little more, it looks like it has a little more yellow to it almost, or an R0. I can't remember if it's 08 or 09. I'm going to stick, actually, let's do this. I'm going to actually use the warm grays on this side. Drying. Can you imagine what my table is starting to look like now with markers? I bet you can, as I whip them all out and play with them about. Got a little 72 marker pickup going. So this is warm gray, so W9. I just find with blacks in particular, starting with the darker and working toward doing that dark to light instead. For me, with the black, that to me it helps control that color so it doesn't look like a helmet, and so it doesn't, and I hope you know what I mean by looking like a helmet, that it all gets real solid, that you lose the fact that there's shape there. It's not just this solid object. I think that makes sense. But so I'm working down through the grays just like I worked with my cool grays. So I went W9, W7, this is W5. So it kind of brought it in. Because I'm going in reverse from dark to light, it does look a lot smoother. I don't see as much texture. I would need to go back and add some of that in if I want more. But let's grab that red again so we don't lose that deep, rich. What do you think, Kim? This could be your next color combo on you. All right. So this one on the right is R29 and then W9, W7, W5. So 3 very different black. 1, 2, 3. But you can play a lot, and actually there was one more. Sorry, there's one more. Because I really, really wanted to show you. You could also go, let's see, I don't need any of those again. They're moving. We'll play again with you another day. I think I might need that one. I can't remember. Okay. One other, and we'll do it on her right side. Actually, you know what? Here. Yeah, we'll do it on her. Give this gal a hair color. I'm going to start with a yellow red. This is YR24. If you don't own any of the YR2s and you do a lot of people and enjoy coloring hair or are getting into coloring hair, that YR2 series has a lot of flexibility to them. It's a little bit of a warm yellow. Oh, Kim, I'm changing mine in September. We can compare notes. But my rule is once a year. I get to change mine once a year. At least that's my rule for me. I don't think it's my rule for anybody else. It's my rule for me because I don't think I could manage it any more than that. Okay. I need those. Except I just dropped what I need. Okay. Yes. So we're going to go for a black again, but this is going to have that really, this is going to stay warm because we've got this really warm underline. And I haven't done this combo before, so we'll see what happens. I have a different combo I'll show you here in just a second with this. In fact, we could do her split head too. Maybe we'll do that. Probably a good idea. Okay, so this is W9. So if there's any other like specific how to color hair questions, absolutely add those in the question box. And if I don't get to them, if you're coming to this recorded, if you tag me, so add my name, because that way I'm going to get notified that it's in there. I will make a point of trying to get back and check these for you guys. Oh, yay, Kim. That's awesome. I am so glad. Found the next distributor. Wonderful, wonderful. I was hoping. It's nice to have connections every once in a while. So this is actually going a little bit greenish. I'm not sure if I'm going to like this combo. This was a new to me combo. So that was the W7. This is the W5. I'm not sure. This one would have to sit on me for like, I'd have to come back to this. What if I'm going to come back with my YR24, brighten her up just a touch. That's not bad when you brighten it. It definitely doesn't look black, but almost like a deep auburn, like deep brown that has some real gold underlying tones. So I'm not sure about that combo, but there's one. I know I'm going to like this better. So on her left, this was skin. And then left hair, we've got YR24, W9, W7, W5, right. We're going to start with that YR24, obviously. But then what if instead of a cool gray, we switch over to a really dark brown? Yay, Janet, I'm glad you like that one. So I am going to do some E4s. Now, if you're going for dark brown, the E4s are going to get you there more so than the E3s or the E2s. Both of those still are a lighter, like a milk chocolate, bark brown, like they are very much your kind of neutral browns. The E4s have a little bit of gray in them, and so they will get you even darker, a little bit cooler, but not as cool as a gray. So I think we're actually going to like this one maybe even better. This is an E49. This is what happens when I like have a crazy summer and I am doing these kind of by the seat of my pants. But to me, this is fun because I'm finding new color combos that then I'm going to come back and use on images. So that part's really cool. This is an E47. On my YouTube channel, a couple people have requested that I say the names as well as the number. So if anyone here ever needs me to do that or say those, I can do that. I don't go by them. It's just too hard. Yes, this is me smiling because these are combos I've never tried before. So I'm just pulling things that I think might work, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I think some of it, when you've done, I mean, I've literally done hundreds, maybe a couple thousand or more heads of hair and tried all different color combinations. And so you get better at picking, just looking at the marker tops. And I appreciate they're not exact, but you get better at picking what could I layer with what. And you can always go with the fail-safe. You can go with a little natural blending group and those work. But I think it's kind of fun sometimes to just really try something different. So I only used 2 of the E's. I did E49, E47. Yeah, see, I'm going to like this. That's a neat color combo. And simple. I mean, it's 3 colors. And then that YR24 to soften those edges. Yum. I like this. I love this. That's, to me, this is the fun part of playing with Copic. Okay, so that one is the YR24 and then E49 and E47. And that was it. That's all that's on that side. So those are kind of fun ones to me. And again, like if I was really, I might do a whole head of hair, but if I'm truly just playing with color and trying to keep track, that's enough for me to see what I've got and know enough to see the differences when I have them all lined up together. Brunettes have a huge, huge range. And so I'm going to pull a couple of these over that were already in the brunettes. So here's a simple E2 series that we started with, the E21, 23, 25, 27. Here we have a couple that ended up looking like brunettes. Here's a couple more that look like very lighter brunettes. This one has a little bit of a red undertone with those, with a YR24 in the middle on both of these. So it has a little bit of a reddish undertone. Browns and brunettes you can play with. And again, just like we did with the black hair, underpainting it with a color. So underpainting it with a red or a yellow red is going to take it to that goldeny red zone. If you really want it to be more of blonde highlights, let's do one of those and then we'll do something different. I'll just do the side of her hair. So what if we wanted a brunette that had a real kind of golden blonde feel underline? I would start with a nice warm yellow. This is one option. That's the Y21. It's the one I have on my table. You could do something like a Y32 or 35, depending on how dark you wanted to get it. And then I would start with that E2 series, but I'm not going to start with the lightest. I'm going to start with the E23. So we can really play up the fact that these are highlights. These would be that, it's that head of hair that gold kind of shines through when it hits the sun just right. Again, little kids have that beautiful kind of rich textures and colors in their hair a lot of times, more so than we do as we get older. So this is that what I grabbed, 2.7. So 2.3, and I jumped all the way to 2.7. Meant to grab 2.5, but this is gonna work. Yeah, I'm gonna go back with my 2.3. I'm gonna pull that in a little further. Not too much from the top, but more. There we go. Bring that highlight higher up. Yeah. And then just a little bit, brighten that up, warm it up. Y21 right in that highlight. We've softened that texture a little bit there. And I agree, Janet, that's the fun part of faces to me, is that you can have a single stamp and make it look so completely different by the skin tone, the hair, it's significant. So again, let's do this little trick here. We're gonna say the left side, we haven't done yet, but the right side, I have to remind myself which is left and which is right, is Y21, and then E23 and E27. But obviously much deeper, much darker brunette. You could do a red undertone, something that has more red in it, like that YR24, or something with even more red, or like a YR14. It's going to go orange, and so it's going to have, again, much redder undertones to it. Okay, brunettes, blondes, we've talked about a little bit. Redheads are a blast to color, super fun, and there's bunches of color combinations out there you can play with. I'll show you a really fun kind of right in the middle one, and this is, I apologize because it's all over the board with the color families, but it's a color combo that I like, so I'm just throwing it out there. The first is a YR, and it's a 3-1. So again, you could use a YR2 for this, and so you'd find the lighter one of that. I can't remember if it has a 2.0, like a YR20 or a YR21, but you'd want the lightest. This happens to be YR31. That's one of the markers I've had for like almost since I started Copic coloring, and so it's one that comes out of my bag a lot. Just very familiar with it. I know it. So then I'm going to jump over to those YR2s, those ones I was telling you about. And one of the things I love is with redheads, this is just, to me, it ends up looking more like an actual redhead and not somebody with hair that's painted orange. Now you can go for a deeper red. This is going to be a really natural red. This is not going to be your Carrot Top bright red. This is going to be kind of a really subtle, pretty red. And then YR27. Fewer flicks, they still will have different lengths to them. And then if you want, you can stop here. You could soften that, call it good, and that's going to be kind of that vibrant redhead. You can deepen it. Oh, yeah, Melanie. She has gorgeous hair. Gorgeous hair. I haven't seen it in person, but just in her photo, it looks like she has that stunning, rich red hair. So E09 is what I would use kind of sparingly. Now, this is an earth tone, but it has got a ton of red in it. And I love it because it really punches and really deepens. And so I don't need to use very much. And I'm definitely going to want to soften it. But look how red that looks in comparison. And that's an earth tone. That's an E09. So remember how I talk sometimes when we soften, we skip? So here's a great example. We've got these 4 markers that we used. Y21, YR24, YR27, and E09. So this is where I ended. I'm going to skip this one and jump to this one because I don't want to smooth it out like to the point that it's blended in. I'm going to jump back to YR24 and I'm going to start right on top of that E09, and I might even pull it a little bit further into that highlight area. And then grab my highlight color, which was that YR31, and right in that highlight, back and forth, going right into those little spots that are left behind so I don't lose my texture, but I brighten up that highlight. So that's kind of a fun one. And that goes real extreme, has that real bright gold highlight into that deep red. But that's an option, and you could bring those reds in further. You don't have to leave it out that far. You can play with reds that have this richer, like burgundy undertone to them. So reds to me are one of these that are just like, wow, you could really go crazy just with the reds. But hair in general to me is kind of like that. So there's another option. So we're already at an hour. But I do want to talk about 2 other things for sure. So I'm going to have all of these, and let me write this down or I'm going to forget. We had YR31 and then YR24, YR27, and E09. So you're going to have all of these combinations, and we didn't do all of them today, but these are ones I will put on our Facebook group. And then if I have time, I've got a couple more little heads that haven't had their hair colored. I'll put just some new combos, and I always write them down in the order that I use them. So you'll see that. But this gives you a bunch. So some hair coloring options. But I wanted to show you, and we haven't even, this is all straight hair. We haven't talked about braids or ponytails or curly hair. So I don't know, Kim, if you'd want, we could absolutely do kind of a second part to this when I come back. or we could work this in somewhere where we do kind of a second part if people are interested, and you guys have to let us know. And if you're tuning into this later and you're watching the recorded, this is the stuff we need to know what you really want to see. So we could do more hair because there's way more to talk about, or we can just move on, acknowledge and move on. Okay, I wanted to show you, troubleshoot for you guys, 2 issues though that I see on head of hair. And actually, it'll be better if we do it on a head of hair. So this poor lady is going to have trouble issues. So one of the things I see happen when people color, and this is really, really typical, and I'm going to start super light and go pretty dark so you guys can see that contrast. So 2 big things. Say we're doing that real simple E21, 23, 25 series. So this is my E21, and I'm just going to base, and we'll base this as well, because we're going to show you kind of 2 issues. And these are probably the 2 most significant issues that I see people do and get frustrated with. There's more. These are the most common. All right. So then I'm just going to grab my 2-3 and my 2-5. So problem number 1 is, I should show you 3. I'm like thinking of it. Which is the most important to show? Okay. Problem number 1 is this. They're starting from the part and they do some little flicks, but they realize that this 2-3 has to get all the way around. So they come out here and do a few more flicks here and a few more flicks here. And then they come down. And I'm not making fun of anybody. This is actually, I've taught hundreds of people live, and I've watched hundreds of people do this. This is not an uncommon problem. But it tends to make them like, I can't do hair. I don't know what's wrong. They start at the bottom again. They realize they need to get almost all the way up to here. So they end up coming up. What happens is you have these little breaks, and it doesn't look like hair that's starting and going all the way down. Okay. As hard as it is to do, you have to come all the way back to the part and start teaching your hand how to get around that curve and come all the way around, not these little tiny pieces in the middle. When you set your marker down, it needs to be either setting down at the tip of the hair or at the part. Now, there's a couple ways to cheat really long hair, but this is not really long hair, so we're not there. We can talk about that in a more intermediate advanced class, but we want to go all the way down and come all the way up. Don't leave those little choppy pieces in the middle. So number 1, no choppy, oh, I'm not going to spell it right. I before E except over C. Pieces. If you ever watch me teach and try to spell things, you will eventually see me spell something wrong. I apologize. You can laugh. It's okay. The second big issue that I see is they come in, they're flicking, they're going from their starting point. They're doing great. Here comes our E23, E23, E23. And then they come in with their E25, 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 E25. And they're like, what? Now she's got these like stripes. Why it doesn't look like yours? What did I do different? I mean, even the one that's blended smooth. If I blend this smooth, we'd have a band and a band. So again, number 2, you do not want the same length of strokes. You have to vary them. There has to be some short. There has to be some long, even in your darkest colors. So even when I did like the dark yellow, those little flicks are different lengths. especially, and that's the hardest one, especially on these darker heads of hair. Some of those dark have to come out and almost touch or just touch those highlights. You have to vary the lengths. So number 2, vary stroke length even on darker colors. So there's number 2. These are the 2 biggest issues I see. The other one is kind of what I talked about when we colored this little boy's hair black. The other one is getting off on the direction, if that makes sense. So it's coming in on this little boy and saying, okay, I want it darker near his face, and then I'm going to go away from that. And then, so it's all like coming up and over, and then you sit back and you look at it and you're like, what, I get it, you know, and it just, and then, okay, from the opposite side forward. And so the last one is that you're working with the actual, like, think about how your hair, so when I don't have a good sample of this pulled out, and I apologize. So let's do this. Let's draw ahead. So say the little girl, say we have a little girl or a little boy, I guess it doesn't really matter. And say she has a ponytail. Scrunchy ponytail. And maybe she has little bangs across her face. And the artist is kind of showing us that by giving us a few little flicks. They sometimes have a little starter. So on a head of hair like this, if I try to go across side to side, it is going to look so odd. So see, here's her little, give her a little more information so you can see her. I actually want to go with how that hair is going to run. It's going to run from the bangs back. It's going to go into that hair tie, so it has to converge on that. It has to curve around and go into that hair tie, and then it comes out of that hair tie and it comes up and around. It swoops. That high point is where you're going to catch a little bit of highlight on a ponytail. And then her little bangs straight up and down, so it comes from the part out, from the tips up. But this is number 3. So these are your big tips. Number 3, go with the flow. Or in the direction of hair growth, if that makes sense. Obviously with a ponytail, you've moved the hair, you've pulled it into that hair tie. So think about it. Think about if that little girl had a ponytail, her hair is coming from the back of her ear up to that. So you think, look at a photo, think about it, look at your child. So all of this, I will take a couple photos so you guys can at least see it all and get a good sense of that. So you have all these color combinations. You're gonna have our magic 3, number 1. These are the 3 big issues I see with people struggling with hair. No little choppy pieces. Start at the stop, you know, start all the way back at the start and the bottom. Vary the stroke length so you don't end up with these solid bands, and then also go with the direction of the hair. Keep it in that flow. It might take a few times to get it. So if there's specific things about hair that you'd love to see next time, we'll just plan on doing another one. And we'll do some, I will make a list of the color combos we've used so we can use different ones. Maybe do an ombre hair. We definitely should do curly hair, maybe braided, or maybe some dews, so you guys can see those different like ideas of how to do those. So if there's other things you guys want, specifically, it looks like people would be interested in having more of this. We'll plan on it, and that way, but if there's, again, make a little list, tag my name, say, Michelle, add this to your list, Michelle, add this to your list, and we'll get those on for the next time, whether I come back at my next schedule appointment or schedule color along, or we'll come back in between. I'll see what I can do schedule wise. All right. Thank you everybody for joining. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in after, as always, you guys, I had a great time. Have a great night. Have a happy, colorful day.